Hello, everybody. Ian Barkin back again with OneTAKE live streaming on LinkedIn and Twitter. Thank you so much for joining me wherever you are around the world. I hope you are healthy and safe and staying sane and taking care of both yourself and your families and your community. I'm really excited about this one. But before we get started, just wanted to say if anyone is out there, finds themselves in a position where they're looking for jobs, looking for an opportunity, Sykes has an outstanding work at home capability. We've had it for 20 plus years. We are helping enterprises, leading brands all over the world. So if you're looking for opportunities, check us out at jobs.sykes.com. Again, jobs.sykes.com, because we are always hiring and have a great capability. Okay. So without further ado, this one's a little nerve-wracking because I'm pretending to be anywhere near capable and comfortable doing this sort of live streaming, chatting, interviewing thing. My guest today is an absolute expert in the world, hands down, no questions asked, doing all of those things: blogging, doing podcasts, and talking and writing and researching about customer experience. So without further ado, want to welcome Mark Hillary to OneTAKE. Mark, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks, Ian. Thanks for the nice reception there.
Oh, well, and I'm not done yet, because this is where I say a bunch of other things about you, and then you get to correct me. So Mark, you really have, throughout your career, spent a lot of time working with outsourcing associations, working with numerous media outlets to explore and examine services and outsourcing, but specifically with a focus on customer experience. And so talk to us a little bit about that. How did you get started? Is being a prolific writer, an expert, an interviewer the thing you wanted to be when you grew up, or did you have different plans?
No, I mean, originally when I was at college, I studied computer science. And so my first job was developing software. So I kind of rose through the ranks. I went through a few different companies, but I ended up running the equity trading technology for a major investment bank. So I was basically running all of the connections from the bank to the stock exchanges around the world. And that's where I kind of got into this originally, because I started working with a lot of outsourcing partners. I went over to India for a long time, and I ended up writing a book about that whole experience of setting up a new center over in India. And this is while I was still working at the bank. But then I just kind of I decided I'd much rather write professionally than get up early every morning and go to the bank. So I just kind of switched career and started writing for the media, writing for more books as well. And then people started calling me up and saying, "Hey, you're writing about a lot of stuff that's similar to what our company does. Would you like to be the ghost of our chief executive?" And I didn't really kind of plan that, but it just worked out. And so now that's really what I do, a kind of portfolio of some corporate work, some journalism, and books.
That's outstanding. And it exposes you to so many, as you say, you've got a podcast. It's called CX Files. Mm-hmm. And in it, you speak to analysts and to practitioners, experts in the field. And I was lucky enough to be a guest on your show back in September of last year. And we'll put links to that in the show notes for this show. No good deed goes unpunished. So I asked you to be on my show. What steers the sort of narrative? What are you looking for from those experts to share with your audience on CX Files?
Well, normally I'm just trying to look at the future. I'm trying to get the view of people who are actually in the industry and doing this, to find out where they think it's going. What are the technologies that are changing? What are the processes and services that are changing in the industry? So that's why I'm always just looking for new guests who are actually doing something. Obviously, I'm always approached all the time by PRs asking to get their people on the show, and that's interesting because sometimes a company like yourselves, obviously Sykes wants to get out there and be seen in the media. But you've got something interesting to say, and it's not just. Sometimes I'm approached by people who are saying little more than just come and buy our stuff.
Yeah, that I've never done that. I think people turn off when they hear that, rightfully so. This is, I mean, and my inspiration, I suppose, even before the days of OneTAKE, which is really, I mean, if you think about it, it's very much modeled on CX files. I look to speak to experts who are actually doing this stuff, and it's not an advertisement because that would be terrible. I wouldn't want to listen to that, but it is talking to experts who really have been there. So let's pit. Well, okay. Before we leave, though, one other background tidbit. So you were in Sao Paulo. What led you to be in lovely, clearly sunny Sao Paulo?
Yeah. Right now the sun is shining every day. I met a Brazilian girl when I'm from London. I met a girl in London. We got married in the UK. And then after a while, she said, I've been away from Brazil for over 10 years now. Would you like to go? And so I moved down. That's pretty much it.
How's your Portuguese?
Not bad. I'm managing. Can chat about football to the barber. That's when there is a barber open. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. I miss a lot of things. I miss traveling. I miss going to a lot of places, including Brazil, and look forward to one day being able to do that again sometime.
Yeah, come and visit.
Okay, so let's pivot, but not pivot too far. Let's go to customer experience. So, and maybe not late as in the last few years, but in the last sort of several years, people have gone CX crazy. Everyone is really excited about it. They spend probably more time, back to your PR point, more time just writing copy and putting it in their PR pitches than truly embedding it in their DNA and the way that they actually approach things. What was the history of that? I sort of understand why customer experience would be so incredibly valuable, but why is it so popular in the last few years?
I think that what you've seen is this evolution. Customer service itself was always just kind of like a necessary evil. Companies had to offer some way of their customers being able to get in touch. And so it was always seen as this kind of like post-sale contact, often a complaint, or the customer has a problem with the product and they need to talk to the brand. And that's where it's really changed, and it's like a result of going multi-channel. So now being able to reach brands in a very different way. It's not just multiplied the number of channels, it's actually changed the way that people interact with brands. And, an example might be your local supermarket. If you post something on Twitter asking them a question, then just being able to have that kind of dialogue is a very different type of experience. And so I think that we've started to see the whole process of sales, marketing, customer service kind of blending, because in all their different ways, they're effectively the brand reaching out and touching the customer in some way. Right. And so we're seeing that's really the big change, is this focus on the entire journey, from how does the customer begin to even know about your product? How do they then learn more about it? How do they make a purchase? And then how do you keep them involved afterwards? Right. There's classic brands out there. Harley Davidson is a good one. You don't just buy a Harley to be to ride a motorbike. It's essentially like a lifestyle. You become a part of the club, That's right. Okay. I'm going to take a quick break just because I'm still getting good at this and I'm far from it, but want to welcome certain people who've shared their names with us who are on the feed. So quickly, James McMasters, hello again from Scotland. You are such a loyal watcher, listener. I really appreciate you. Thank you. Shay, hello from Boston. Mark Barrett, hello. We've got Nick Ryan. From the U.S. That's not very specific, Nick. U.S. is big. Where are you? Istvan, hello from Budapest. We've got some folks from Johannesburg, Maduduzi. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Michael Hoffman, hello. So if you are with us, please share where you're joining us from and share your questions with us. So Mark, you'd mentioned there's this convergence, marketing, sales, service, the relationship that brands have with their buyers, both through the channels that now we so commonly use, and also certain brands are lifestyle brands that are so much more than, in the case of Harley Davidson, just a
a vehicle that gets us from point A to point B.
Mm.
Well, let's fast forward to the COVID era, to the days we're in right now. Enterprises, brands have lost, in some cases, some touch points, some ability to build a relationship with us. For instance, in stores, in brick and mortar, in big box, we can't go into an environment anymore. We're spending a lot more time having things sort of either left at a curbside where we can pick them up or having them delivered to us. Do you think this dynamic of fully applying just e-commerce at every level of that relationship, sort of value chain, is that going to change the customer experience discipline?
Yeah, I think most probably it will. And I think that there's a sort of myopia, in the industry at present. There's this idea that once we get past this lockdown and quarantine, we can then just return to business as normal. And I think that's a dangerous idea, that this constant hope that we're just going to get back to normal. I think that we have to accept that while there is this pandemic in the world, and we don't have a vaccine for it, then we're going to need to apply social distancing. It's basically the only weapon that we have against this. And we've seen that, during this kind of lockdown period, everybody tried to stay at home as much as possible. Don't interact with people, don't go to the football stadium. But there's a sort of an expectation that we will finish this soon, and you can see that with the daily announcements of President Trump in America. He's been making the mistake actually of talking about targets. By May 1st we'll all be back to normal and stuff like this. And I think that's dangerous. I'm not talking about it from a political point of view, but I mean, if you're running a company and you're expecting things to just go back to normal on May 1st, that you're going to have a serious problem in future. I think that what we need to do is prepare for a period of a couple of years where we have to have social distancing. And so you need to be thinking, how does that change your business? With retailers, clearly, they're going to have to focus much more on improving their e-commerce offering. And where they do have stores, they're going to have to sort of keep these, restricted numbers of people inside the store and stuff like that.
Right.
Which, in a grocery store, it's not so bad. But, let's say you're a high fashion outlet. You're definitely going to kill the vibe.
Right. No, I think that's right. I think some of that experience, and this is what kept stores in business when you could have bought almost anything online over the last decade, is there's something experiential about it. There's something influential about it, just watching other people be there and shop. I remember in some of my psychology classes, just the impact of having others in a store picking up products and evaluating them almost assigned a higher value to them in your mind. And we've lost that. Now, we've got star ratings and things on websites, but we really do have to pivot completely. You mentioned targets and timelines. In the folks that you're speaking to, are you sensing sort of a delta or dissonance between expectations and timelines from suppliers per se, from the stores, from service providers, and from customers? Is one group thinking we're back to normal in a month, and another group's thinking, crap, this could go on for years?
Yeah, I haven't seen that kind of dissonance between the customer base and the brands themselves. I think that there's a generally still a belief that things will be normal fairly soon, and that goes for both sides. Yeah. You do have you have some analysts and some people talking about a kind of 2-year time frame, because we know that the resources that are being thrown at this vaccine, we can see that every scientist across the world is working on this problem. So even though we also know that the world record to develop a virus vaccine was about 4 or 5 years. So clearly it has to be faster than the fastest they've ever done it before for us to be talking about business more or less as normal by 2022.
Right. No, it's extraordinary. If anybody knows the answer, give us a call, post it in the questions. So have you seen, just anecdotally, enterprises that are are getting this right, that are really either have pivoted rapidly from the experiences they'd traditionally created and the channels they traditionally used, or alternatively, just these hot upshot sort of new players that are just exploding new sort of stars on the scene, thanks to the new rules of physics that we're all having to follow.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's clearly a few things like grocery deliveries that are just exploding. I know that 33% of Italians that have recently ordered groceries online have never done it before. So, there's an enormous uptick in services that are allowing you to remain away from other people, essentially. But that in itself is difficult because, we know that most grocery retailers are actually operating on pretty thin margins. So if you add in all the logistics, they need to start delivering at scale rather than only a small percentage of shoppers. Then that's pretty difficult for them. So I think that, where you see the retailers that are managing to do this well, that's going to be really interesting.
Right. Well, that's great. Let's go to, I'm going to take another break. Welcome some other people. Zareen Bedford, welcome. Sandeep Pandey. Hello, Michael Hoffman. It is my pleasure to have mentioned you. Michael Ringo, hello. We've got a question, actually a few questions. This is great. We've got a question from Sandeep Pandey asking, with COVID uncertainty looming large, what questions are being asked from CEOs, CFOs to the CMOs and marketing leaders? So that's really interesting. So this kind of touches back to the PR concept of what's the chief executive and the chief finance officer asking of those who put the narrative out about the company, who talk about the experience or the brand or the style that company is trying to create in the market. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've got a view on that because I think that for like B2C consumer products, there's probably not a great deal changing. Maybe they're changing the channel mix and maybe using social more than any other kind of advertising. But certainly B2B, I think, is being like flipped on its head overnight. I mean, I've talked for years about how tools like LinkedIn are really vital for B2B salespeople to interact with prospects. And now they're seeing that is essentially their only channel. There's no conferences going on anywhere. There's no sales junkets or summits or anything. Nobody can travel. So, if you're in a B2B business and you need your people to be out there in front of prospects, it's essentially online. It's things like this. It's video, blogs, content. You've got to demonstrate that you know your industry.
Yeah. No, it's. We chatted a little bit before we started with the live stream about how it's also impacted just the general cultural tone of companies, of every individual. We're not necessarily expected to dress up, be wearing a three-piece suit and a tie sitting from home, and we know we're all sitting at home. So it's also humanized individuals. I mean, even those CEOs and CFOs that you mentioned, Sandeep, we're seeing sort of a more tone or more, I guess, informal version of them. And I'm seeing some of that from enterprises as well. I mean, to your point, Mark, I mean, you can ramp up selling and promoting the services that are appropriate in light of the current situation, right? So you can ramp up your shipping services or your work at home capabilities, et cetera. But the one thing that I've seen enterprises do, and frankly, it's really well, I haven't gotten to the point where it's cheesy or tired or slick yet, is all of these advertisements and commercials, even on TV, of individuals working from home, working from their bedroom offices. And man, those things bring me to near tears of just all the different companies that are pulling out all the stops and really being innovative to serve you, whether it's an insurance company or a healthcare company or a telecom provider. So yeah, I mean, I guess from my perspective, playing the role of a CMO, I am seeing that we're capitalizing on on the situation. I hope we're doing it appropriately and respectfully, by showing that we're in this together. We're in this as well as everyone else. We're also scared and concerned and pragmatic and scrappy and trying to make the best of a terrible situation. That's a great point. Okay, so we've talked about how this might influence and pivot and adjust the way that we approach CX. Are there particular industries that you think, Mark, are going to come out ahead? Are there ones? I mean, certainly there are ones whose businesses are fully shut down at the moment. But are there particular ones that you feel are taking advantage of this, again, respectfully and not capitalizing on it, but that are able to really emphasize experience at a time when we're all in this situation?
Yeah. I mean, I think that what's interesting is that we're seeing some of these immediate crisis behavioral changes with consumers, like e-commerce exploding. Everybody's been looking at the Amazon stock price. Amazon's earning tens of thousands of dollars, each minute. But companies like that, anyone doing e-commerce really well, being able to deliver products to you really quickly during this kind of crisis, they're definitely going to do well. But I think that there's going to be some longer term shifts, things like education. We've been forced to do homeschooling. College age kids have been sent home from university, but they're continuing to manage classes through tools like Zoom for lectures. But other sort of more specialized education systems that allow teachers and parents to interact. If you look at what I mentioned Italy earlier, but they're an interesting case study there because they were a bit ahead of everybody else in Europe. And they've gone for a full scale online education system. So the state education system. And when you look at how complex it is and how they've done it almost overnight, you think, why would they want to go back? Like, the school itself is basically just a creche to look after the kids, right, because the processes they've got in place are really impressive. I think that you'll see gig economy stuff increasing as well, because of the deliveries and stuff like that. Yep. But then there's also entertainment, of course. We've seen Netflix explode in popularity, but I think more importantly, maybe gaming. Gaming is really, people have gone back to games that they might have remembered when they were younger, and then they just stopped gaming. Other things happened in their life, and they're going back to that and finding that gaming today is actually very social activity. So it's ideal for the people in quarantine. You right. Just get on League of Legends, you can chat and talk to other people and play the game.
Right. There was an article recently about how, I skimmed it quickly, so I'll paraphrase and maybe this will be accurate, but the idea was that a lot of traffic, a lot of volume into call centers was actually just people looking to be kept company. And so that concept of games being a chance for people to just socially gather, to virtually socially gather, what is so fascinating is, thank goodness, but you'll get the point when I say it, but this is a very different situation today than it might have been 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. The tools that we have, the mechanisms that were in place that were being used to some extent that have just been absolutely supercharged and fired up, and with really the only limitation being perhaps infrastructure and bandwidth. And then, unfortunately, the digital divide created by the fact that some people don't have access to the devices or the connectivity necessary to tap into this democratization of everything. As you said, you don't need to be in a particular town in Italy to go to that particular school any longer, nor do you need to be in a particular country to go to that particular school. And we saw that with things like Khan Academy. We saw that with LinkedIn Learning and others. But now that's going to be absolutely supercharged.
Yeah. And you may well see that the major kind of Ivy League brand universities having to kind of effectively market themselves as a brand rather than a kind of bricks and mortar university.
That's really interesting. Let's pivot. That was a great pivot, actually, to a university for a moment, because this was in my background research of you. I saw that you had pursued something that is a dream of mine. I actually was lucky enough to do a short stint at London School of Economics. You did a longer one, and did research in organizational and social psychology. I thought that was a fascinating field. Talk a little bit about what inspired you to do that, and then I want to expand on that, to take a look at how are organizations going to evolve and change as a result of the situation today.
Yeah, I mean, what happened was, originally I studied software engineering, computer science, but then gradually as I went through my career, I started becoming more senior until, I got to the point that I had people in 8 or 9 different countries reporting to me, and so you end up quite senior. And I got my company to pay for me to do an MBA. So I did an MBA at Liverpool University, and during that, I think the part that I enjoyed the most was the organizational behavior and psychology part of it. So actually studying how people behave at work, how can you influence people, this kind of thing. And so then I just looked around and tried to find somewhere where I could do that in more detail. I chose the LSE, but the thing is, I didn't finish the PhD. I went there to work on it, but the university was very much pushing me down an academic route. So the end result would be teaching organizational psychology rather than using it as an applied skill inside business. So yeah, I kind of diverged from it in the end, but it was fun while I was there.
I think it's so relevant to everyone in every field and anything that they do. And now, I mean, if you think about just making sense in organizations, we talked about the question that was asked about CEOs, CFOs, the social dynamics and the barriers, I think, are really breaking down, because you're seeing your teams, your bosses, you're being invited into people's homes. You would never have really thought to all congregate. It would be interesting to go back now and look at the impact of technology and the sort of virtualization and the social meetings that we had always. We always had phone calls. We've had video chats for a long time, but I would imagine the coursework you did, the classes I liked so much, will have an asterisk now and talk about the now sort of modern way of engaging with employees, in the same way as we're talking about modern ways to engage with customers and with partners in the CX field.
Yeah, well, certainly, I mean, the research I was doing was on trust and the value. Can you quantify and put a value on trust within organizations? So the way that managers manage their people. And I think that that's something that we're really seeing becoming very important right now, as a lot of companies, especially professional service companies, are asking all of their team to just work from home. You can't manage people in the same way anymore. I mean, you have to let them get on with the job. You have to trust them to do it. And you have to start managing and rewarding people based on what they deliver, rather than the presenteeism, how he's always the first in the office and the last out, but actually does he deliver on time, So I think that's definitely a positive change, this kind of trust and empathy that managers now have to apply. Right.
No, that's absolutely right. And, who cares if he's wearing shorts or still pajamas? He's there and he's focused. Yeah. That's funny. Okay. So, sort of last questions on the service industry as a whole. So there's front and back office. CX is usually talked about more in the front office. It's the phone calls. It's the warm touch points with customers where experiences can really be created. Are you seeing a difference in the level of interest, energy, and discussion around CX and the evolution of it in back office versus front office service industries?
Yeah, I think that what we're seeing is a real push. First, of course, in the immediate crisis, it's get the agents to go home, work from home. But I think we're now seeing people focusing more attention on what are the processes being used to manage those agents. How are they being rewarded, recognized? What are the information security standards being applied here? Are we going to find that there's a massive data breach next month? And that happened because 10,000 people suddenly went home and didn't have the processes in place to support that.
Yeah, that's interesting. One last one. This was dredged up in my research, but at one point in your past, you used to blog for the British government.
Yeah.
And so I did my research, and if the research was correct, it was talking about citizen experience, a different C in the CX acronym soup. Do you think governments are handling an emphasis on creating good citizen experience right now? Are they handling it well? Are you seeing, obviously there's massive discrepancies around the planet. You are a global citizen, you are from a place, you live a different place, and you study this field. What are your thoughts on the government approach to citizen experience at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's difficult right now because clearly you're seeing there's some leaders that appear to be more concerned with their own political future rather than dealing with the crisis as a human problem. So you know, I think that you can look to places like New Zealand, where they've taken a completely different approach to what you can see in places like the US, UK, Brazil. It's much more around how do we get through this? How do we look after the people? And how do we ensure that we put everybody's health first? And you know, there was an interesting because the problem here is what's the cost to the economy if we keep closed down like this? So you know, people are obviously worried about jobs and what will happen to the economy. But then again, you know, you can look at well, what's the value of a life? You know, if you go to actuaries and insurance companies. I know traditionally in America, the insurance industry valued a person at $3 million. But NPR recently did an interesting study that kind of went back and looked at all those numbers again and then revalued it. And I think it went up by 10 times or something, you know. So we're talking about enormous economic shock, but at the same time, you know, how do the political leaders handle that in a way that's not political? Right.
Right, and it's being politicized. We joked before the show too that viruses don't necessarily care about politics.
Yeah, they don't vote for anyone. They don't have a party.
Nope. They're just concerned about surviving and spreading to do so. And so that's an interesting reality that we're going to face too. Is the political sort of social psychology of sharing information, trying to educate people so that they do know why certain decisions are being made, in the same way as brands are putting out narratives and educating their customers and their own teams as to why changes are happening.
Yeah.
Well, so that's been extraordinary. This was as interesting as I knew it would be, speaking to an absolute expert in CX who has spent his career really examining, studying, and speaking to true to visionaries and practitioners. I want to thank everyone who joined us as well. There's some great questions. Michael Hoffman, you've had some great comments too. I'll respond to some of them, and I'll have Mark do so after the show as well. So there's some really interesting discussions around e-gaming, around this new intimacy that's developed through sort of virtual connectedness when physical distance is our new reality. So I just want to thank everybody who's joined us from all over the world. We will put links to CX Files, Mark's podcast, in the show notes and share it on all of our social posts. So please do check that out because Mark is amazing. He's got great guests and he covers a truly interesting topic, I think, for all of us. And with that, really, Mark, any last thoughts or words on the state of CX and the new future of CX in the world that we live in today?
I think just finally, I think that point we were making earlier about the new normal, I think that's going to be really important. You know, you can get through the crisis, obviously, if you've got enough cash in the bank right now, but you've got to plan for a couple of years of disruption to your business. And we're not going to go back to 2019, you know, so think very carefully, you know, how does your business need to entirely pivot, or is there something that you can enhance about the business so that you can get through the next couple of years?
Outstanding. Thank you so much, Mark. Thanks everyone for joining. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have a great day.